In this era of deep complexity,
He's a friend of CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore, because they have no credibility.
beyond the edges of black or white,
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing!
it's time to be notionally accurate.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping.
Here are your hosts, Captain Kirk and some guy named Jason.
Welcome one and all to the 22nd episode of the Notionally Accurate podcast, produced live right here at the One Man's Burden Studios, my undisclosed compound, located in the frostbitten dunes of the Sahara Glacier. My name is Captain Kirk, and I'll be your affable host. Alright everyone, the long national nightmare is nearing its end. Oh no. I don't mean Cory Booker's useless marathon speech on the Senate floor. And no, I'm not talking about the trade war that the Trump White House is gearing up for. I'm referring to the most important issue of our time, whether female congressmen can vote by proxy rather than leave their children to the federally funded daycare system, or, heaven forbid, their husbands or partners. Seriously though, the stock market crashing as investors get clacking knees caused President Trump to pivot to a different tariff structure. But that's the art of the deal. Put out the bombastic proposal, judge the reaction, be flexible enough to take the win. As Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent rightly noted, China is surrounded, and America is taking the lead in talking with its neighbors for free trade deals that'll benefit both them and us in the process. The Supreme Court has handed the Trump administration some wins recently, such as okaying an anti-DEI initiative to start funding for the teaching of that deeply racist crap. Also, the court, in a 5-4 decision, ruled that the White House can use the Alien Enemies Act to deport illegal immigrants. That's a topic we had handled in episode 21. The court in that ruling also affirmed that the district judges have limiting principles. They cannot issue nationwide injunctions, as they have been doing. The Supreme Court smartly focused deportee challenges to the states where the illegals are deported from. So, if an illegal is slated for deportation in Texas or Florida, they'd have to challenge the removal in those courts, which prevents a sideways judge from keeping the illegal immigrant in the U.S. despite President Trump. My co-host, some guy named Jason, and I tackle the tariff war, see how correct I was in saying that the president was willing to pivot when necessary, and the election-centric SAVE Act. Plus the performance art that was Booker's Marathon Talkathon, as well as highlight the Finnish president standing up to Russia, thanks to American weaponry and firepower. He posted a photo of President Trump and him playing golf with big smiles. It's never felt so good to be so back. Speaking of being so back, President Trump met with the World Series winning LA Dodgers at the White House and had this fantastic interaction with pitcher Clayton Kershaw.
Mr. President, we have a gift for you as well.
During an upbeat White House visit to celebrate their World Series win, the LA Dodgers provided President Trump a number 47 jersey in Dodgers white and blue with the name Trump on the back.
Speaking of President Trump, he met with noted hater Bill Maher for a dinner courtesy of Kid Rock. Maher had apparently brought a list of insults levied at him by President Trump over the years, and Trump signed them. That's hilarious. Maher ran through the timeline on Friday's Real Time, forecasting how hated he'll be to his liberal viewers for betraying them.
And he said, you know, I've heard from a lot of people who really like that we're having this dinner. Not all, but a lot. And I said, same. A lot of people told me they loved it, but not all. And we agreed. The people who don't even want us to talk, we don't like you. Don't talk, as opposed to what? Writing the same editorial for the millionth time and making 25-hour speeches into the wind? Really, that's what liberals have? He takes the piss out of everybody else and we can hold ours? Okay, that's my report. You can hate me for it, but I'm not a liar. Trump was gracious and measured, and why he isn't that in other settings, I don't know, and I can't answer, and it's not my place to answer. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I wasn't high. Damn, missed opportunity. All right, we got a great show. Piers Morgan and Josh.
In sadder news, actor Val Kilmer passed away from throat cancer he's been battling since 2015 at the relatively young age of 65. Loved him in Tombstone, Weird Science. Pretty much every film he was in was good to great. It's a real loss. His cameo in Top Gun Maverick hit all the right notes. It was an added bonus to see him one last time as Iceman, giving Mav the needed motivation to go through with that harrowing mission. Goodbye, Doc.
I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Not to end this introduction on a low note, how about Alexander Ovechkin, roughly in his 70s considering his long NHL tenure, breaking the great one, Wayne Gretzky's goal record. Simply phenomenal. Here's the audio from that incredible feat.
The chasing days are done! Alex Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer in the history of the NHL!
So, Jason, did you survive the Trumpocalypse?
Barely. I thought of you this week, though.
Well, that means a lot.
Was in a neighborhood. Yeah, well, I mean, I think of you sometimes. But I was in a neighborhood, beautiful neighborhood, grassy lawns, the trees, very shady trees. Weather was perfect.
White picket fences.
There were quite a few white picket fences. And on these lawns were one sign, Black Lives Matter. The next sign was the list of things that love lives in this house, and we believe in science. And I think it said never Trump on it. And another sign said Harris Waltz. They had the house across the street had one of those trans flags, you know, like with the big awkward triangle, brown triangle, which who puts a brown triangle on a flag?
They do.
It's weird. Yeah. Whatever. So I saw all this, and I'm not kidding you, hand to God, I saw all this, and as I'm looking at this, obviously a political statement of a lawn, an electric school bus drives behind me. Now, I didn't look and see how many of those they actually made, but I know they didn't make very many, right? It was under hundreds, right?
Right.
I mean, it was under 1,000. They didn't make it. Did they make 1,000 school buses, electric school buses? I imagine it has to be under.
I think even then it might have been too many.
Right. They wanted them. And as part of this whole Green New Deal, they wanted to make tons and hundreds and thousands of school buses, and they didn't. They didn't make that many, and I didn't think they actually existed. So as I'm looking at this well manicured, it was a very nice lawn, and it was a very lovely neighborhood. Looking at this political front lawn, and the electric school bus drives behind me, and it's making that UFO sound, you know, that all electric vehicles have to let you know that it's in motion. It's the, like, amazing. So I thought of you. I thought of Kamala Harris, and then I thought of you after I thought of Kamala Harris, because obviously whenever you see an electric school bus, if you don't think of Kamala Harris and how much she loves electric school buses, then I don't know what you're doing. But it made me think of you. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's better than this Frizzle driving that bus, right?
Yeah. Well, I wanted
Magic
to know,
school bus.
like, I wanted to see, like, if I like have you as a neighbor. You would have been one of those guys with a Trump flag on the, you know, flying out front. You know, these colors don't run.
May even have an appeal to heaven flag.
Yeah, I could see you doing that. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
Don't tread on me. I could see you having that. You know, but yeah. So
don't give up the ship.
But it was a neighborhood I think you would have loved to someday when you meet your own little Mrs. Captain and you decide to have your own little captains. Hopefully someday you would live in a neighborhood like that. It would be very interesting to see you there.
My Miss First Officer.
What a poop deck. Sorry.
Oh, too soon.
All right, tariffs.
Speaking of poop decks.
Let's talk tariffs. Happy Liberty Day on the 2nd.
Liberation Day.
Liberation. Was it Liberation Day? Are people really calling it Liberation Day? Is that really sticking?
Trump is.
Okay.
I don't think so. I haven't seen anyone but him use it.
Because I didn't. Whatever. This is just when the entire world order changed. That's all that happened on that. I mean,
big whoop, you know.
Big whoop.
Oh, a new world order. Oh no.
So, I have been hearing a lot of things, reading a lot of things about tariffs. I hear a lot of bad things about them. I hear some good things about them. So I have a list of questions here that I'm going to ask you because you are our local expert on most things. Just because it's between the two of us, you probably know more.
Somebody has to be.
So, yeah. So you being the local expert, I'm going to ask you some tariff questions and see what you can tell me about tariffs. That sound like a plan, Sam?
Go for it.
All right. So why tariffs? Why is Trump? What's the deal? Why is he choosing this as his economic strategy?
So tariffs are a tool in the tool bag. It's not just tariffs he's aiming for. He's gunning for deregulation, tax incentives, and tax rate reductions in order to spur growth. He's trying to force these countries that we've been dealing with for the past 50, 60, 70 years since World War II, who have been dumping their cheap products into American markets and costing us jobs, wages, and a manufacturing base that has increasingly declined since the 1970s. Yes, some of it is automation, robots, and the like, but you have to have mechanics and technicians and other related fields in order to maintain and provide upkeep for these machines. And there are jobs that you can't necessarily automate. I work in one of those jobs, and you can't automate what I do. It's not going to work. So he is utilizing via tariffs, again, and other tools in an attempt to reorient the global trade system to benefit America. After all, he is America first.
What's the point of shifting everything right now? Of really changing the direction of everything?
Because, again, America's been essentially the lone superpower for the last 40 years or so, since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And with China rising, we are in a precarious situation, a national security situation, where the Chinese are providing via a Belt and Road initiative to various countries economic opportunities that benefit them. And Trump is looking to, again, reorient that system and essentially block China from being able to colonize the world economically and bully us around.
Well, are we through these tariffs, are we punishing nations though that don't deserve it?
In regard to which countries?
I don't know, like the Canadians, or I don't know, anyone that we've been historically on good ground with, the Israelites, Israelis or whatever.
So when they tariff us and our goods and prevent our goods from entering their markets via economic blockades like tariffs, is that not disrespecting us? Is that not trying to take advantage of us and prevent us from trade with them? I don't think so. As long as we can come to an agreement with these countries, and we've seen since the tariffs were announced, a whole host of countries coming to the White House through their trade representatives, begging for a deal that will prevent these tariffs from taking place. So I don't have a problem with that.
Is this going to raise the price of goods on everything? Because I did hear a critique on tariffs. Is it's a way to it's a tax hike.
Trump's reciprocal tariffs impose hundreds of billions of dollars in new taxes on Americans, be the largest tax increase since the Revenue Act of 1968. One of the biggest tax increases on American consumers in the history of America. And it's going to cost American consumers. It will cost American producers who use inputs from other countries. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted immediately more than 1,000 points. The S&P 500 plummeted more than 3%. The NASDAQ plummeted almost 4.5%. There are real world implications for this sort of stuff. Trade wars are in fact not good and not easy to win, particularly if you don't actually have a plan. It is predicated on a bad idea of how international trade works.
This is in kind of a way to raise taxes without going through the political channels of Congress or anything like that. This is an executive branch way of raising taxes, and everything is going to go up, and prices in goods our cost of living might increase, and how much is that going to affect the average American?
So I'll take the charge that this is the executive branch raising taxes. You can't avoid taxation. You can avoid tariffs by American. And there'll be a period of change where we onshore and bring back manufacturing jobs in other industries. So you can't avoid taxation. You can avoid goods that have been tariffed, and that's buying American. There will be a period of adjustment that we'll be having to undergo. There might be some price increases as companies try to make up for the percentage of the tariff. And as far as the executive branch being the ones to raise this tariff, this is actually based on a economic policy that has been put in place in order to allow the president to raise tariffs when he feels a national security issue has arisen.
The International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, is a U.S. federal law passed in 1977. The law grants the president powers to regulate America's international trade. And under what circumstances can it be applied? According to the law, in the face of an unusual and extraordinary threat from abroad to U.S. foreign policy, national security, or the economy. That is, during times of declared national emergencies with respect to such threats. The law authorizes the president to investigate, regulate, or prohibit any transaction in foreign exchange and properties that are controlled by another country or foreign nationals. It also gives the president authority over financial transactions and property in which any foreign country or individual has any interest. Beginning with Jimmy Carter in response to the Iran hostage crisis, American presidents have invoked the law to protect the U.S. interests by freezing or blocking assets of adversarial foreign governments or certain foreign nationals abroad.
If you don't agree that it's a national security issue, that's just a difference of opinion. And the desire to prevent these tariffs from being raised, I understand from the conservative capitalist mindset, oh, tariffs are bad. But the same can't be said for the left, who love taxation. Tax rates are hard to reduce through the legislature than through the executive branch. But tariffs, they can be placed, smacked on a country or a particular industry, and they can also be removed really quickly as well. There's a big meme going around, oh, ha, 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 we tariffed a country that has a population of 0. And I'm not sure what island that was. Oh, it just has penguins on it, ha, ha, ha. There were some funny memes that came out of that, replacing like Zelensky at the White House with a penguin. And Vance saying, you should have said please. That's pretty funny. But the reason they did that is because China will shift its production lines outside of China, outside of the countries that have seen tariffs raised upon them, and use essentially a backdoor channel to continue with their cheaply made goods, manipulated currency, and duplicitous trade practices. This is an attempt to level the playing field by having countries come to us, negotiate better deals, and ensure a fair playing field for all. The countries that have come to Trump are pretty wide-ranging. Vietnam, India, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Cambodia, Australia, the UK, Argentina, Canada, and Mexico. So that's a wide swath of countries that don't want to fight a trade war with us and understand that the best way to ensure stability is to lower your tariffs, and then we'll lower ours. These are reciprocal tariffs. The market did not like that. Of course they didn't, because their gravy train of cheap goods and high profits will be affected by it. Prices will rise But as we know from the Biden administration, inflation is transitory, and there'll be a period of adjustment once we onshore and decouple ourselves from Chinese manufacturing, Chinese trade. We'll have a stronger advantage in the end goal than we do now. So we need to let these policies work out. Again, it's not just tariffs. There has to be deregulation on a wide scale and tax rate reductions that is up to the legislature. And unfortunately, they're twiddling their thumbs and not moving as fast as they could. I understand the GOP has a slim majority in both houses of Congress, but I think once the totality of the policies that Trump is trying to put in place are able to be felt in a tangible way, we'll be far better off than we were even 5 months ago.
How long do you think Trump is going to go on with these tariffs? Is this a permanent plan for the next 4 years? Or do you think if this does not go the way it should, that he would adapt and change? Or is this something we're going to ride out until the end of his administration?
One thing that irks conservatives, small c conservatives, capitalists, and is that Trump is not an ideologue. But that's also one of the genius ways he conducts the art of the deal. He'll have the bombastic proposal. He'll have these high tariffs placed on different industries, different countries. And if they don't work, he'll remove them. And if he sees them come to the White House to make a deal, he'll remove them as well. He's not inherently ideological where he's just going to pound his fist and say, this is my way. He will adapt, and if he sees that the markets aren't reacting to the tariff deregulation tax cut policy, he's nimble enough on his feet policy-wise to shift and alter things. I think the people he has around him, Kevin Hassett, Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessent.
Kristen, what I like is data. And if we look at data from President Trump's first term, and there's a big study that just came out from a group of economists, mostly at MIT, that showed that a 20% tariff on China led to a 0.7% tax or price level increase over 4 years. I think that's pretty good. If we can take in 20% in tariffs and it's a 0.7% increase. And Kristen, the little publicized story this week, everyone wants to look at the stock market going down. You know what else went down? Oil prices went down almost 15% in 2 days, which impacts working Americans much more than the stock market does. Interest rates hit their low for the year, so I'm expecting the mortgage applications to pick up.
Well, just to be very clear, though, I mean, during President Trump's first terms, the cost to Americans was nearly $80 billion in new taxes due to his tariffs. The prices did go up on everything from washing machines to tires.
Well, no, but let's go back. The aggregate number was 0.7, so we can discern the individual things. Also, households saw real net wages go up. So if wages go up faster than prices, which is not what happened over the past 4 years, that's why the bottom 50% got eviscerated.
His team around him are providing mixtures of a tool bag that he can pull out the drill and the hammer when he needs to. He can also saw some things off or construct a broader economic policy that will, again, the point is to create fair trade deals for the U.S. and revitalize manufacturing and other industries that have been hollowed out the last 50 years.
Well, do you think the American people can withstand a trade war? And if they can, how long? Because it's whether or not the American people can withstand it, right?
Yes, and that's a fascinating thing about this is the only wars Trump detractors don't want to fight are trade wars. They're fine with Israel being struck every day and having the retaliation occur so they can complain about, oh, my evil Zionists. They love that Ukraine is launching attacks into Russia because then that escalates the war over there into perpetuity. Up until 2020, really didn't have an issue with Afghanistan until things turned in Iraq. Didn't really have a problem with the Iraq war. For some reason, trade wars are the only wars we're not allowed to fight, even when China is flat out taking advantage of us, utilizing their underhanded trade policies in order to gain advantage upon us. Do the American people have the stomach for it? Well, I've seen polling that shows the stock portfolio types, the ones who focus on Wall Street 24/7, they're spooked.
Whew, it's bigger than I expected.
Yeah.
I obviously expected the reciprocal tariffs, but I wasn't expecting the 10% baseline or universal tariff. So my back of the envelope math says it's a roughly $500 billion in tariff revenue.
That's right.
It seems like they're more semi-permanent or permanent than temporary. I was initially thinking they would be temporary. We would try and get other countries to drop their tariff rates, and then we would drop ours as well. It seems like it's more semi-permanent or permanent. If that's the case, what I really hope is going to happen is there are going to be large tax cuts on both personal income and business income to offset that. And one of the things President Trump and his administration floated was the possibility of no tax on everyone making less than $150,000 a year. My back of the envelope math on that says that's a cost of about $600 billion. And remember, he's been talking, now that's, you got to get that through Congress. But if those two things balance out, that could actually spur economic growth.
But there are manufacturers and laborers that support these tariffs.
Well, first I want to start with this industry is in a unique position. While other people in agriculture may be a little bit worried about the tariffs, people like Alan Adams here who run this cattle farm are uniquely positioned because, again, as you said, this will level the playing field. So tell me how you're feeling at this moment.
Well, you know, we've struggled with tariffs my whole adult life in the cattle business. And so we were happy to hear the president last week mention that beef was one of the things that he wanted to have tariffs lowered. And so some of the European countries and Australia have been difficult for us to sell beef in. And so they get to sell beef into our country, and we're happy to have them compete against us. But we'd like the same chance to sell the great taste of American beef to them.
And again, it's not just tariffs. I want to emphasize that. It's not just tariffs. This will be a holistic approach to this trade war that includes mass deregulation, tax incentives. So do the American people have the stomach for it? We'll see.
The poll finds a fair amount of economic anxiety and disapproval of these tariffs, but not a lot of firm judgment yet about whether this should make them turn on the president and disapprove of him overall. Donald Trump's job approval rating is 46% approve, 51% disapprove. While that's a negative rating, underwater by 5 points, it still shows some resilience. There is some anxiety out there, people are worried, but so far they're kind of waiting and watching even while they're worrying.
But if these trade policies are able to bring back jobs, raise wages, I think the American people will stick with it. If it turns out that everything across the board, the prices rise and no jobs are onshored, no investments are made from foreign companies and investors, yeah, I can see the American people getting a little sick of it. But there has to be a period where we allow these policies to take hold.
Yeah, but I don't know. Americans love their stuff.
They do love their cheap goods. That is very true.
All right, the SAVE Act. So the SAVE Act is up before the House, or it's getting batted around in the House. It's a voting act preventing non-citizens from voting. The reason why I was looking into it is my wife came to me, and she was really freaking out about the whole maiden name thing, where she, because of the maiden name, she may not be able to vote. and all these different things, and they're making this sound like they're taking away rights from people. And my wife is not political at all. She doesn't follow these things at all. So it was kind of odd for her to come up to me and be like, what do you know about the SAVE Act? And I was like, I don't know. I'll talk to Captain Kirk, figure out what's going on. But talking to you, I mean, this sounds like it's a really good and necessary thing.
So this is what the SAVE Act is. A lot of concern has arisen from these localities, New York or New York City, I'm sure some cities in California, allowing non-citizens the ability to vote in local elections. And the criticism of the SAVE Act is, non-citizens aren't allowed to vote in federal elections anyway. What's the big deal? But the fact that they're opposing this effort to prevent non-citizens from voting in federal elections is because that's exactly what they want. They want the non-citizens to affect federal elections. They protest too much, effectively, where if there's no problem, what's wrong with passing this law? As far as your wife's concern goes, does she vote in every election?
Yes.
And she uses your last name, correct?
No.
She uses her maiden name?
She kept her name. Yeah.
And is her maiden name the one that's on the voter registration?
Yes.
So there will be no problem. Because she...
Well, I know, not for her.
Right.
She was just bringing it up. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounded like she was concerned.
Well, I think she's more concerned of the idea that they're trying to take away people's right to vote, is what I think she was kept catching. I don't know. She's I don't know. She's always had her maiden name. It's never been a thing. I don't care. I don't know.
Would a new bill disqualify voters who have changed their names? Well, that's what some people are saying about the SAVE Act, also known as the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. Take a look.
I don't care if you are red or blue, you need to listen up. If you are a woman that has changed your name from your birth certificate, let's say through marriage, and you took your husband's name, you are no longer eligible to vote if this bill passes the Senate.
Is she right about this bill making women ineligible to vote? No, not really. The bill says people would have to show certain types of ID in order to register to vote. That could be a real ID, a military ID, or even a passport. You can see some of those options here. Critics worry that women who change their name could face complications if the name on their birth certificate doesn't match the one on one of those forms of ID. A recent Pew Research survey found that nearly 80% of women who get married change their last name. So they could face some hangups if that bill passes, but that TikTok video goes way too far. The bill would not automatically disqualify women who change their name, and that's why the Truth Meter rates that video mostly false. Read more about this issue at WREL.com.
But if anything, it piqued my interest in asking about the SAFE Act, where I was like, I don't know what's going on. What's the big deal? But looking into it and talking to you, it's like, okay, so this is a big thing. And what's interesting is that we have to have a SAVE Act because it does show that the replacement theory was a thing. The open borders thing was a thing. That was an actual political plan.
So segueing into the replacement theory, there's the anti-Semitic Jews are behind this, blah, blah, blah. Not talking about that. We're just talking about the policies that allowed for open borders, which chipped away at safeguards, especially during COVID, regarding things like signature check and voter ID, which Wisconsin, even though they voted for a liberal Supreme Court judge in their recent election, voted overwhelmingly for a constitutional amendment to provide requirements for not just voter ID, but photo ID, which will strengthen their elections, though there's concern whether or not the new judge will side with the other liberals. It's a 4-3 court on the side of the left, and they'll try and strike down that constitutional amendment. We'll have to see how that plays out. But there's no issue with strengthening election systems, especially with the open border policy that the libertarian right and the internationalist globalist left were trying to accomplish. There is a replacement of the natives. Replacement theory is a conspiracy theory. Well, in 2000, the UN put out a report titled, literally, you can look this up right now, it's called Replacement Migration, because the West has low birth rates. And so the solution to the aforementioned groups, the libertarian right and the globalist left, is to import migrants, illegal and illegal, to bolster economies that are seeing the effects of a low birth rate, natives applying less for jobs are more likely to be on welfare. And so this is not conspiracy theory, like you said. This is reality. We even have the erstwhile president, Joe Biden, talking about how much he loves that natives of America, and this is across demographics, are being replaced. And what a wonderful thing that'll be, that we're majority minority, because he is, an internationalist, a globalist, and we had seen that with his presidency.
Not only our Muslim communities, but African communities, Asian communities, Hispanic communities, and the wave still continues. It's not going to stop, nor should we want it to stop. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things I think we can be most proud of. So there's a second thing in that black box, an unrelenting stream of immigration, non-stop. Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America from then and on will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing. That's a source of our strength.
One thing I like about the Trump administration is that they are using the CPB-1 app, which the Biden administration put out to expedite asylum claims, which is effectively creating a stronger magnet for illegal and legal immigrants to enter the country. They're now using it as a self-deportation device and using the information entered into CPB-1 under the Biden administration to send these illegals back. So it's a nice little parlay that they're playing.
The pandemic really opened everything up. It really showed all of the ugliness that happens within the deep state. What happens in Washington. The replacement theory is a thing. They wanted to make the United States, like California, a deep blue state to where you have one Democrat running against another Democrat. And it just depends on how deep of blue that Democrat is how you're voting. But you're voting Democrat because of the actual, the populace.
So to that point, in 2020, there was a census. And for those not in the know, the census is conducted by the Commerce Department, at the time run by the Trump administration. But I mean, there were holdovers and people embedded within the system that ensured that when the apportionment for these congressional districts nationwide took place, states like Colorado received a House seat that they didn't deserve. Other states, blue states, received House seats that they didn't deserve. Some of these states actually should have lost because of the COVID era depopulation effort. They should have lost seats. They actually gained seats because the census mechanism has been toyed with. And effectively, a lot of red states had their House apportionment in the negative, overcounting blue states, undercounting red states. I'm sure that's just a coincidence that took place. But we see that they're using all the tools in their tool bag to ensure that the Democrat Party remains the Fifth Reich, as it were, so that they can rule for the next 1,000 years. And that kind of reminds me of a particular party in Germany, the 1930s and 40s. But hey, anyway, but yeah, so that's some of the games being played there.
And they were socialists too.
Oh, imagine that.
No, but it did prove and show that there is a lot of conspiracies happening and there's a lot of manipulation behind the scenes. And the American public, they turned the way of Trump and anti-woke. And it really, well, first of all, I love the fact that there are now 4 books coming out. And I guess you said you've read one of them already. 4 books coming out about the Biden-Harris fiasco that was their presidential run against Trump. But people forget that if Trump wouldn't have won, America would be a lot different. And Europe, woke won. Woke is winning in Europe. So we have, on one hand, we kind of leaned right, and Europe is leaning left, and now the Democrats are writing books about it.
Right, the same people that were telling us, oh, if you pay attention to Joe Biden's inability to walk a foot without tripping, you're contributing to cheap fakes, which are manipulated pieces of media meant to make Biden look bad. Well, it turned out even they knew. The book I had read is from Jonathan Allen. He works for NBC, and his co-writer is Amy Parnas, who works for The Hill. They had written a book about the 2016 election called Shattered, Inside Hillary's Doomed Campaign. Very interesting book as far as peeling back the inner workings of both campaigns. I thought it was a little too deferential to Hillary, but this book, it's called Fight, I thought did a good job, even though anyone who's paid attention to the election on a granular level may not be entirely surprised with what took place. The inner dialogue between campaign managers and advisors and all that sort of inner machination between the two campaigns was very interesting. I found most interesting is that on election night, according to this book, Fight, Kamala Harris was actually asking her advisors whether or not she could contest the election results and ask for a recount on the swing states. They never reached the point where the recount would be eligible, and the advisors had to break the news to her. But it's interesting because this whole campaign, according to the Democrats, was the future of democracy. And here we have the titular head of the Democrat Party, the Democrat candidate, trying to deny the election results and aim for a recount. The irony.
The irony. Do you think these books would have been written if Harris won?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. After the 2020 election, there were a couple books even from Allen and Parnas about the victory that Biden had in that election. So, yeah, I think it would have happened either way. But it is interesting to see the absolute devastation that took place within the Kamala Harris campaign as election night rolled on, results were coming in, and it was clear that she had no path to victory.
Well, and you do know she is going to be the next governor of California. You do know that, right?
God help us all.
No, she is. She is. Hand to God. I know she is.
Ronald Reagan's rolling in his grave.
I can feel it in my bones. No, but I feel, though, and this is why I bring this up, is because with the Biden election, with him looking horrible, with them inserting Harris, the non-democratic way of doing things, the whole thing looked horrible. Trump won. Well, you have in France, it's not the same thing. You have the Marine Le Pen. So she was a presidential candidate, and how long is she was thrown in prison now? So they are trying to do what they tried to do to Trump, they accomplish and are doing to her.
Correct. They have
so how
barred
long is she
her
in prison for?
So I'm not sure what the prison time, if any, she is facing. The more important thing, like the Democrats try to do, and the Never Trump Republicans try to do with Trump, invoking the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause and preventing Trump from running in 2024, which obviously did not work. What they're doing with Le Pen is they are barring her for a period of like 3 years or so just in time for the 2027 French elections. I believe Macron, current president, is term limited, so he won't be able to run again. But they want to be able to get their globalist, internationalist stooge, whoever the successor to Macron will be, elected.
But the system has actually worked to get her, and Trump narrowly escaped. Yeah, they try to throw him in prison. They try to kill him. Dear God.
Correct. Yeah, a couple centimeters to one direction or the other, his head would have exploded. And I'm sure it's a coincidence that Butler rally was the first rally that CNN had covered for the Trump campaign. It was the July 13th Butler rally.
Whoa. What are the odds?
A little odd. Yeah, a little podunk town in Pennsylvania. And you decide to carry that one live, the first one. I have my doubts.
Well, I'd be remiss if we don't talk about the physical feat, the mental journey,
dynamism,
the mental dynamism that Senator Cory Booker displayed this week with a 25-hour filibuster. Now, this is funny to me on a few different levels. Obviously, the fact that the Democrats have been, because they've been in power for so long, they wanted to get rid of the filibuster so bad. There's no need for it. They want to get rid of the filibuster. They want to get rid of the Senate, I think, in the same breath at one point, the filibuster and the Senate. And we needed like 12 more seats for the Supreme Court. 12 more seats, Supreme Court, no Senate, and no filibuster. Anyway, so now they're embracing the filibuster. This is their resist moments. And so Senator Cory Booker, 25 hours. So Strom, right? I know he was a racist, and
Strom Thurmond.
And people don't really like him. Who has a kid? I looked at my wife and said, who has a little baby boy and looks at it and says, you know what? That's a Strom. You know, I don't know. Like, I think he'd have to come out and like have like one eyebrow. I don't know. Anyway, so Strom Thurmond, he filibustered for 24 hours, and he did it to gum up the works for a civil rights bill. So so the filibuster title he kind of held the title for a long time for not a good reason, right? But he had a reason for this filibuster. Then that's the key.
And Booker didn't even have a bill to filibuster.
No reason. That's the thing, is everyone was like, wow, I can't believe he did it. This is amazing. But why? So traditionally, how a filibuster is used is, and tell me if I'm wrong here. Is it's coming down to the wire. This bill is about to pass, but the minority does not give up the floor to vote on the bill. And it's their one like little last out to exercise as a minority power, so that way you're not getting completely bowled over by the majority. Correct? And it's kind of like to delay things a little bit. It's just to kind of gum up the works.
That's right? the stripped down basics of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but nothing was going on. He was gumming up nothing. Like there was no bill. There was nothing like he wasn't doing this for any reason other than to do it. It's so very odd. And it is so Democratic Party. You know what I mean? To do something for no reason and make it look good and get off and be sweating like, yeah, I haven't ate or drank or anything in days and, you know, whatever. Why? Why did you do this? What is the point? I don't know. I just thought it was hilarious.
To be fair, the former GOP wordsmith, political consultant, Frank Luntz, he did inform us that Cory Booker's filibuster will change the world.
And I want to emphasize, what Cory Booker did over the last 24 hours may have changed the course of political history.
I Okay. Yeah, I don't see how.
Do you feel changed?
I'm changed. Maybe it has changed. I just didn't realize
Well,
it.
I noticed the spring in your step. It's passing you by, man. We're in a brave new world.
Yeah, maybe. And I can tell people why is your attitude changed? Cory Booker did a 25-hour speech. That's why. Does anyone know what he talked about? Has anyone even talked about what he talked about? No one has even talked about what he talked about. No one even cares what he talked about. Whole thing's just ridiculous.
It was a performative act for no real benefit.
No, yeah. It was political. It was a cheap political stunt. Like literally a cheap, like for no reason. It was a political stunt for no reason other than he looks good, I guess. I don't know.
Well, he doesn't even look good because he's kind of a sweaty bald man with crazy eyes. So he got into his little act, and it was embarrassing, really. It was funny. I didn't even know he was doing it until like the final minute of the filibuster, and they were like, "Wow, look at this filibuster!" And it's like I didn't even know it was happening. And then to see he's not even filibustering a bill. Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't even a filibuster. It was just like a long speech. Like technically, it wasn't even a filibuster.
Congratulations.
Right? Yeah,
it wasn't an official filibuster because you're not blocking legislation. So
yeah, you're literally just talking. Whatever.
Correct.
That's very odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. They said he didn't wear diapers. That he didn't drink any like liquids or something for like 10 hours beforehand. And
yeah, he fasted.
Whatever.
Good job. You're changing nothing.
And next week he's gonna put a metal needle through his forearm. It's gonna be awesome. Up there on the podium. Like, it's like a David
for his $26 filibuster.
Yeah, that's funny. It'd be frozen in ice.
Captain America ain't got nothing on him.
What do you think about yeah. What do you think about the Colorado bill, the legal protection for trans individuals? So I guess there's a bill in the House here in Colorado. So I'm in Colorado. I'm from Colorado. And we have been discussing how Colorado is probably one of, if not the only, truly good functioning blue state. Ish.
I mean, kinda, not really.
Well, it's not as bad as California. It's not as bad as New York or Illinois.
They're definitely trying to become California, trying to become Chicago, trying to become New York City. But they do meet like the bare minimum amount of resistance from a fractured, broken Colorado Republican Party that is able to at least make some noise, though the assembly is owned by the Democrats. They have a Democrat governor and their courts are packed with Democrat appointees. So it's essentially a one-party state. We've seen Polis try and jack up property tax rates on homeowners. He's killed off open meeting requests and the transparency standards that they used to have in order to block the minority party from having any say in these legislative affairs. The Democrats in that state have successfully passed a bill to create a tax on ammunition in order to work around the Second Amendment rulings from the Supreme Court, like Bruin and Heller, because they want to emulate Sacramento. And if there was no Republican Party, which is what they're trying to ensure, if there was no Republican Party in that state, they would run roughshod over whatever tepid resistance there was and would open up a whole host of horrible, terrible policies. And this legal protections for transgender individual bill, it makes it so that if you misgender your own child, you are liable to have the custody of your child removed from you if you misgender your own child. So don't you dare misgender your daughter.
Wow. I won't. Believe you me. That'll be, yeah, whatever. Yeah, what happens if your daughter has a mustache? I can't help it. It's genetic.
Dad, call me Andy.
That's funny. So, Germany is funding a new version of Starlink, something to compete with Starlink in Ukraine. It's run by Eutelsat.
Oh yes, the very famous satellite company, Eutelsat. I mean, I know you can't stop talking about it.
They're trying to edge out Musk. I can't. They're trying to edge out Musk. I don't think this is a bad thing. Do you?
I don't have a problem with them financing their own satellite orbit, their own satellite platoon. Go right ahead. If you're so angry at Elon Musk and you want to dig into him and kind of needle him or whatever, I don't care. Go right ahead.
Well, I think it's great because Europe, to a certain degree, they're taking the responsibility for what they've got going on over there. I don't think it's bad to have a strong Europe.
Competition is good.
It's good for these countries to be strong. And I don't know why, Europe for some reason, I guess maybe the huge world wars can make you a little gun shy, I guess. But they're real nervous about being strong. You were telling me about the Finland president was here, and the Finnish president, and so we're giving them 62 FA-18 fighters and 64 F-35 fighters. See, I think that's great. You know what makes Putin a little nervous? Those crazy Finns, bro. I love me some crazy Finns. My grandpa was a Finn. The Finns having power, the Finns having weapons, that's good. Germany being in control of something in Europe, that's good. That's not a bad thing. We don't have to be in control of everything. We don't have to have our thumb in everything.
So this is a modern day Lend-Lease program. Last I checked, Lend-Lease helped the Soviets beat the Germans in World War II. Though it is, like you said, kind of interesting. You get cucked in 2 world wars and suddenly you get really skittish about defending yourself. If they're able to break away from that mentality, we see Finland stepping up to the plate. Alexander Tubb posted a photo of himself with Donald Trump in one of his golf courses and talked about the need for cooperation with the U.S. Trump is not an isolationist. He's not an interventionist. For the most part, he'll strike the Houthis here and there if they decide to get uppity in the Red Sea. But I don't think that's necessarily a problem. He's not invading countries. That's what I'm worried about. That's when I say no new wars, no American boots on the ground invading a country for some nefarious reason. I have no problem with it.
Unless you're Greenland.
Then we will be taking that. Thank you, Denmark. In World War II, it was the Finnish that were fighting the Winter War against the Soviets and pushed them away as they were making peace deals with Germany, partitioning Poland. The Finnish military fought hard and drew them to a standstill. And then all of a sudden we turn around and after the war give half of Europe up to the Soviets. Thank goodness FDR passed away when he did. Thank goodness Henry Wallace was replaced by Truman as a VP. As I do believe, if one would read Stalin's war, I think the evidence is pretty clear that FDR would have given the entirety of Western Europe up to Stalin because they were such great buds. His former ambassador to the Soviet Union, William C. Bullitt, recalled a conversation he had with FDR that said, you know what, I think Stalin's a pretty good guy. And if I just give him whatever he wants, he won't try to annex anything. Well, you don't have to annex things if you're given the territory.
I just have a hunch that Stalin is not that kind of man. Harry Hopkins says he's not, and that he doesn't want anything except security for his own country. And I think that if I give him everything I possibly can and ask nothing from him in return, noblesse oblige, He won't try to annex anything and will work with me for a world of democracy and peace.
Thankfully, he passed away when he did. Thankfully, Henry Wallace, who was a progressive socialist, communist, toured the gulags of the Soviet Union and brought back a positive report on it, covering up the atrocities. If FDR and Wallace had maintained their power grip on America, we would have seen the United European Soviet state.
But he didn't. He never took over the Finns. They fought him tooth and nail.
Strong Finnish tradition.
Yeah, they ended up being neutral in the war because they didn't like anybody. And to be honest, nobody liked them either. So I like the idea of the Finns having some jets. I like that. That keeps at least up there, the Russians won't be messing with the Finns. I tell you that. I tell you that right now. They won't mess with the Finns.
And it really puts to lie from the pro-Putin side. Putin invaded Ukraine because of NATO expansion. Well, congratulations. You've pushed Sweden into the NATO coalition. And if they haven't already accepted NATO membership, you have pushed Finland into trying to seek out NATO membership.
Yeah. Well, Finland, and another thing too is Finland is not a slush fund like Ukraine was. Ukraine, like, people forget it's called the Ukraine, and I heard the Ukraine is meant to it's translated as the middle ground. So when you say the Ukraine, it's meant to be like the middle of everything, and so everyone has always used it as kind of their, I don't know. We've talked about it before, but that's why Ukraine was so susceptible to invasion.
Right. And it doesn't help that we may or may not have staged a coup in 2014 to replace
right.
Russian-friendly president with one of our own people, as Victoria Nuland of the State Department said on a leaked phone call with an ambassador, American ambassador to the EU. The EU will control Ukraine's future. And it was right around the time of the first impeachment against Trump that the language started to change. We stopped calling it the Ukraine and we started calling it Ukraine, which is fine. But we also stopped calling their capital Kiev. Now it's supposed to be Kyiv. And it's all these Mandela effect, Men in Black laser memory replacement efforts.
I hate it when that happens.
It's the worst.
That's funny. So to close out the show, Captain Kirk, you wanted to talk about hockey. Which I didn't know that you had
upper north tradition of hockey.
Yeah, you're quite the fan, huh?
I enjoy hockey. I think it's one of the better of the four major American sports.
You did in our previous meeting for the show. You did call it sports ball, and then realized you couldn't call it sports ball because it's actually played with a puck on ice. So sports ball does not work. But you said Ovechkin. I said Ovechkin. He got. So what did he do?
So he scored his 895th goal. Actually today, as we record this on the 6th of April, and he officially surpassed the great, the GOAT, the best hockey player of all time, Wayne Gretzky.
Wow, 895 goals. That's crazy. But he's like 65 years old, right? How old is Ovechkin?
He's effectively in a retirement home at this point.
I mean, seriously, he's been playing since the 50s. No, I mean,
he's 39 years old.
Okay, well that's old. That's old, right? In some people's eyes.
Right.
Not mine, but in some people's
39
eyes.
39 is the new 19 these days, so.
Is it? Well, then what's 19?
The new 9? I'm not entirely sure how that works. Doing the math off the top of my head, yeah, I don't think that works quite well.
The new 9? So what's 9? It's like
prenatal.
Well, congratulations, Ovechkin. He took Wayne Gretzky's advice 895 times.
Congratulations, Alexander Ovechkin.
Crisscrossing with Chikrin through center. Send in Wilson on the flank. Cross ice, Ovechkin fires. Score! The chasing days are done! Alex Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer in the history of the NHL!
Anyway, thank you for listening to episode 22 of Notionally Accurate. Thank you to some guy named Jason for joining me on this one. I'm your host, Captain Kirk. More to come on future episodes. Find this podcast on SoundCloud, Rumble, and YouTube. On Twitter/X at NotionallyACC. That's NotionallyACC. Email the show at notionallyaccurate@protonmail.com. That's notionallyaccurate@protonmail.com. Take care, and remember, even if you can't be factually correct, you can always be notionally accurate.